It was a quiet Thursday morning at Mel's Diner, the kind of place that always seemed to exist somewhere in the background of everyone's life. The walls were lined with retro neon signs, and the smell of sizzling bacon and fresh coffee filled the air. Emily Lawson, a 26-year-old waitress, had been working here for as long as she could remember. She'd spent countless hours serving regulars who knew exactly what they wanted and never looked up from their newspapers. The job, while far from glamorous, was steady enough to keep her head above water. But that morning, everything was about to change. The bell above the door jingled, signaling a new arrival. Emily looked up from her order pad, ready to greet the next customer, but when her eyes locked on the man stepping through the door, her breath caught in her throat. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He walked in with his trademark smile, exuding the same presence that made him a household name. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She had seen him on the big screen, of course, but seeing him in person was something else entirely. He was here, in her diner, like an actual human being. A part of her wanted to pinch herself to make sure she wasn't dreaming. "Hey, welcome to Mel's. Can I get you a table?" Emily stammered, quickly recovering her composure. Dwayne looked up and grinned, his warm, genuine smile making her pulse quicken. "I'll take a booth in the back, please. Just need a moment of peace." "Of course," Emily replied, trying to sound casual even though she was anything but. She quickly led him to a secluded booth near the window. As she handed him the menu, their fingers brushed for a split second. "I'll get you started with some coffee," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Emily walked away, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the coffee pot. "Get it together, Emily," she thought. "He's just a person, like anyone else. Just, much taller." As she poured the coffee into his cup, she glanced at him again. Dwayne wasn't the type to hide behind sunglasses or a hoodie, he was fully present, radiating confidence and charm. Emily tried to focus on her work, but the thoughts of how surreal it all felt kept swirling in her mind. With a deep breath, she approached his table, coffee in hand. "Anything else I can get you to start with?" He looked up from the menu, locking eyes with her once again. There was something disarming about the way he looked at her, so casual, so down-to-earth, that it almost made her forget who he was. "How about a recommendation from the expert?" he said with a playful smile. "I'm starving. What's good here?" Emily blinked, momentarily taken aback by the question. It wasn't every day that a Hollywood superstar asked for advice on the diner's best dishes. She smiled, trying to act like this was any other order. "Well, our pancakes are legendary," she said, her voice gaining confidence. "But if you're in the mood for something hearty, I'd say the steak and eggs are a crowd favorite." He grinned. "Sold. Steak and eggs it is." "Got it," she said, turning to leave. But before she could walk away, Dwayne's voice stopped her. "Hey, I just want to say, I really appreciate the way you're handling this," he said, his tone genuine. "Most people would be freaking out, but you're keeping it cool." Emily's face flushed with embarrassment, but she couldn't help but smile. "Well, I try to keep things professional," she said, laughing nervously. "Just doing my job." Dwayne nodded, his eyes softening. "I respect that. Trust me, the pressure to perform never really goes away, whether it's on a movie set or just in life. It's good to see someone who's got it together." It was strange, hearing those words from someone like him. Most of the people who came into the diner had their own lives to deal with, but Dwayne Johnson. He was a global superstar, a force of nature. And yet, here he was, sitting in a booth just like anyone else. Emily walked away, her mind racing. Was that really him? The whole situation felt like a dream. She couldn't deny the excitement bubbling inside her, but she also couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this encounter than just a random celebrity sighting. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Emily was busy with orders, but every time she passed by Dwayne's table, she couldn't help but glance over. He was polite, always thanking her for refills and giving her a friendly nod. He wasn't like other celebrities who demanded special treatment, he seemed almost normal. As the day wore on, Emily noticed something unusual. Dwayne wasn't just here to eat. He was talking to a couple of people who came over to his table, shaking hands and exchanging a few words. A few people even asked for selfies, and he happily obliged. But there was a tension in the air, an unspoken sense of discomfort that made Emily uneasy. She noticed a shift when Rachel, the diner manager, came over. Rachel had a sharp eye for detail, and it was clear that she was less than pleased to see the attention Dwayne was getting. Emily couldn't help but notice the way Rachel's gaze narrowed when she saw the group surrounding Dwayne's table. "Everything okay, Emily?" Rachel asked, her tone cold. "Yeah, just taking care of Dwayne," Emily replied, trying to sound casual. "He's really nice." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "We don't usually allow that much attention in here. You might want to remind them about our policy." Emily felt a knot form in her stomach. Rachel was always about maintaining order in the diner, but there was something about the way she spoke that made Emily feel like she was doing something wrong by being kind to a celebrity. "Right. I'll handle it," Emily said, but there was a sinking feeling in her chest as she walked back to Dwayne's table. Little did she know, this seemingly harmless encounter would set off a chain of events that would alter the course of her life forever. As she approached, the sound of the diner's bell rang in her ears again, and she couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to take a turn for the worse. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Emily Lawson wasn't the type of person to make waves. She was the quiet one, the one who showed up early and stayed late, doing her job without drawing attention. Life had taught her to be that way, to keep her head down and work hard. But there was more to Emily than the waitress at Mel's diner. Beneath the calm exterior was a woman who had experienced loss, heartbreak, and dreams that felt just out of reach. Growing up, Emily had never known much about luxury. Her parents had separated when she was young, and her mother had done her best to raise Emily and her younger brother, Ryan, on her own. They lived in a modest apartment just outside of the city, and while they didn't have much, they made it work. Her mom worked 2 jobs, and Emily often found herself playing the role of caretaker, making dinner for Ryan and helping him with his homework. They had a tight bond, and she loved him fiercely, but the responsibility weighed on her. Her father was always distant, calling every now and then but never offering much more than a few words of encouragement. When Emily was 12, he stopped calling altogether. He'd gone off to start a new family, leaving Emily and her mother to fend for themselves. That abandonment left a scar on her that she couldn't quite shake, even as an adult. As Emily grew older, she found solace in the idea of escaping her circumstances. She'd always dreamed of a different life, one where she could pursue acting, be on stage or in front of a camera, and leave her small-town life behind. She was a natural performer, with a knack for making people laugh or cry with just a few words. But dreams of fame were quickly buried under the weight of reality. Acting jobs were hard to come by, and when they did appear, they often involved low-paying roles or unpaid auditions. So, Emily did what she had to do to survive. She started working at Mel's Diner when she was 18, drawn in by the promise of steady hours and tips that could cover the bills. The job wasn't glamorous, but it gave her the stability she needed. Emily moved in with a roommate from college, and they shared a small apartment that barely fit them both. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. As the years went by, Emily's dreams of acting seemed further and further out of reach. She wasn't one to complain, though. She'd grown used to the grind. Every day felt the same: serve coffee, take orders, smile through the small talk, and then repeat. There were moments of excitement, of course. Her regular customers, who were more like family, kept her spirits up. And there were days when she would sneak a quick peek at the cast of The Rock's latest movie on the diner's TV, imagining what it would be like to walk in his shoes. But as time passed, Emily began to feel a sense of dissatisfaction that she couldn't shake. She had put her dreams on hold for too long, and she wondered if she would ever get the chance to pursue them. She wasn't sure if she was afraid of failure or afraid of living the same ordinary life forever. Her love life wasn't much different. There had been a few relationships here and there, but none that ever really lasted. The one that stung the most was with Jake, a guy she had dated for over 2 years. They had dreams of moving in together, of building a future. But Jake had broken it off without warning, citing that he needed space to figure things out. Emily was devastated. She had invested so much into their relationship, and in one quick moment, everything fell apart. It felt like a slap in the face, especially since he didn't offer an explanation beyond the standard, "It's not you, it's me." She had spent months healing from that, trying to let go of the idea of perfect love. Through it all, Emily clung to her brother Ryan, who had become her rock. Ryan was 7 years younger than Emily, and she had watched him grow into a kind, smart, and funny young man. He was attending college on a scholarship, working part-time to help cover his expenses. Despite his busy schedule, he always made time for her, and they had an unspoken understanding, no matter how tough life got, they would face it together. But Emily's quiet life, filled with small dreams and small disappointments, had always been overshadowed by the constant desire to break free. She wanted more than this. She wanted to find her purpose, her voice, and perhaps, even her own happiness. But every time she thought about taking that leap, the weight of her responsibilities, her job, her brother, held her back. That's why when Dwayne Johnson walked into Mel's diner, Emily had no idea that her life was about to change forever. The man sitting in that booth was everything she had ever dreamed of, successful, confident, and full of charisma. His larger-than-life persona felt almost unattainable, and yet, here he was, in her world. It was a moment that made her question everything she had ever thought about her own place in the world. The kindness Dwayne showed her that morning, along with the deep conversation they had about the struggles of fame and life, sparked something inside Emily. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she wasn't just a waitress. She was more than that, she was someone with potential, with a story, with dreams that could still come true. But little did she know, the act of helping him out would soon become a test of everything she had ever known about herself. As Emily wiped down a table near the back, she couldn't help but replay the conversation in her mind. Dwayne had been so genuine, so down-to-earth, and it left her feeling like maybe, just maybe, life had something bigger in store for her. But she also couldn't shake the feeling that her life at Mel's diner wasn't going to stay the same for long. The days following Dwayne Johnson's visit to Mel's diner felt like they existed in a haze of disbelief. Emily tried to return to her routine as usual, taking orders, delivering food, refilling coffee cups, but something had shifted. That moment when she'd served him, when they had talked for just a few minutes, had made her feel like she was living a different life altogether. For the first time in years, she felt alive, like her purpose wasn't just to serve food and smile for tips. She could almost feel the pull of something greater waiting for her. But not everyone in Mel's diner shared her excitement. Rachel, the manager, had always been a stickler for the rules. She ran a tight ship and had no tolerance for anything that could threaten the diner's image, especially when it came to celebrity guests. Emily's interactions with Dwayne hadn't escaped Rachel's notice. The manager's disapproving glance whenever she walked by Emily's table spoke volumes. "Everything okay, Emily?" Rachel had asked a few days after Dwayne's visit, her tone colder than usual. "Yeah, of course. Everything's fine," Emily had replied, trying to brush it off. But deep down, she knew Rachel didn't buy it. Rachel wasn't one for small talk, and the way she kept giving Emily looks when she passed by Dwayne's table that morning told Emily that there was more to her manager's mood than just a casual glance. As the next couple of days went by, Rachel's behavior became more pointed. She began assigning Emily the more difficult sections of the diner, the ones with fewer regulars and more demanding customers. The tips were lower, the hours longer, and the constant tension in the air was becoming unbearable. Emily had tried to keep her head down, but it was hard to ignore the growing strain in her relationship with Rachel. One afternoon, Emily arrived at work to find a note pinned to the bulletin board. It was a schedule change that Rachel had written out herself. It looked harmless enough at first glance, but when Emily read the details, her stomach sank. Rachel had moved her to the night shift for the next week, by herself. "This is ridiculous," Emily muttered under her breath, running a hand through her hair. She had always worked the lunch shift, and the idea of being left alone on nights, where the diner was more crowded and less predictable, was unsettling. She looked at the clock on the wall and exhaled sharply. The shift was about to start, and there was nothing she could do about it. By the time Emily arrived that evening, the diner was packed with customers. The buzz of conversation and clinking silverware filled the air. She walked in, her heart beating faster than usual, and immediately felt the weight of Rachel's eyes on her. "Don't screw this up, Emily," Rachel said, a hint of something cold in her tone. "I won't," Emily replied, though she had no idea how the night would go. As she moved through the diner, she couldn't help but notice the usual hum of conversation in the room growing louder. Something was off. Maybe it was the stress of working by herself, or maybe it was the tension she had started to feel with Rachel, but she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was teetering on the edge. Then it happened. As she made her way past the corner booth, a commotion broke out. A man, likely in his mid-50s, was arguing loudly with a waiter from a neighboring table. His voice was rising, and Emily immediately recognized the sense of chaos that always seemed to follow troublemakers. "What is going on?" she thought, rushing toward the scene. As she reached the booth, she saw the man's face turn bright red, his fist pounding on the table. "This is ridiculous," he yelled. "I asked for my steak well done, and you gave me medium rare. I'm not paying for this." The entire diner turned their heads toward the scene. The man's face was contorted in fury, and Emily felt a surge of anxiety flood through her. She had dealt with unruly customers before, but this felt different. It wasn't just the angry outbursts, it was the way everyone was staring, waiting to see how she'd handle the situation. Without thinking, she stepped forward. "Sir, I'm sorry for the mistake. Let me take care of this right away," she said, her voice calm but firm. But the man wasn't listening. "No, you don't get it," he shouted. "This place is a joke. You're all a joke." Rachel was watching from the corner, her arms crossed. Emily glanced at her manager, searching for guidance, but Rachel only shook her head. It was clear she wasn't going to step in. The man's shouting intensified, drawing more attention from the other patrons. The humiliation was unbearable, but Emily kept her composure, knowing she couldn't let this blow up any further. "Sir," she said again, her voice more insistent, "I can fix this. Please, just calm down, and I'll bring you a new dish." But the man wasn't interested in fixing things. Instead, he grabbed his glass of water, slammed it down on the table, and stormed out of the diner, yelling curses behind him. The room fell silent, the tension palpable. Emily stood there, feeling every eye on her, wondering if she had just made a massive mistake. Her heart was racing, and she could feel the sting of embarrassment creeping up her neck. Before she could even process what had just happened, Rachel appeared at her side, her expression a mixture of annoyance and disapproval. "That was a disaster, Emily," Rachel said in a low voice. "You can't just let customers walk all over you like that. You need to be more assertive." "I tried," Emily replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "He wouldn't listen." Rachel didn't seem convinced. "Well, you should have done something more. Do you think Dwayne Johnson would let someone walk all over him like that?" Emily's eyes widened. "What does Dwayne have to do with this?" Rachel gave her a pointed look. "Don't act like you don't know. This is your fault. You've been spending too much time fawning over him. And now, look at this. You've lost control of the diner. The words hit Emily harder than she could have imagined. Rachel had just made it clear that she knew about her interaction with Dwayne. She had been trying to keep things under the radar, but now it was clear, her brief moment of connection with Dwayne had caused trouble in ways she never expected. As Emily looked around the diner, her eyes fell on a few regulars who were whispering amongst themselves, undoubtedly gossiping about the scene that had just unfolded. The pressure was mounting, and she realized that things were no longer as simple as just working a shift. Rachel's words, Dwayne's visit, and the incident with the angry customer had all begun to collide into something bigger. Her life was changing, and Emily wasn't sure if she was ready for what was coming next. The next few days at Mel's diner felt like an emotional roller coaster for Emily. She couldn't shake the discomfort that came with Rachel's harsh words, nor the feeling that she was walking on eggshells. The diner's atmosphere seemed to change overnight. There were more whispers among the staff, and it wasn't just Rachel's cold stares. Even some of the regulars began to treat Emily differently. She could feel their eyes on her whenever she walked past. Despite everything, Emily tried to push through. She had a job to do, after all. She had bills to pay and a brother to support. But no matter how hard she tried to focus on the customers, her mind kept drifting back to the brief encounter with Dwayne Johnson. That unexpected moment of kindness, the way he had opened up to her about the pressures of fame, it was still fresh in her mind. And as she sat at the diner during her break one afternoon, sipping a coffee and staring out the window, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life was meant for something more. It wasn't until that evening, when the diner was nearly empty and the last few customers had left, that Emily's world took another unexpected turn. The bell above the door jingled as a figure walked into the diner, casting a long shadow over the floor. At first, Emily didn't think much of it, just another late-night customer. But then she looked up, and her breath caught in her throat. It was Dwayne Johnson. He walked in as if it was the most ordinary thing in the world, casually striding up to the counter. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't seen him since that morning when he'd made a seemingly random visit, and she couldn't believe he was here again. Was this a coincidence, or was he trying to say something? "Hey there," Dwayne said, his warm voice bringing her back to the present. "Dwayne?" Emily stammered, still shocked. "What are you, how did you?" "I know, it's a bit unexpected, right?" Dwayne smiled, taking a seat at the counter. "I was in the area and thought I'd stop by. Couldn't get Mel's diner out of my head. You made an impression on me." Emily wasn't sure how to react. Part of her wanted to run, to explain that she was just a waitress and that he probably had better things to do than waste his time here. But another part of her felt a strange sense of hope. She had been stuck in the same old routine for so long, and the universe had a funny way of throwing opportunities at you when you least expected it. "Let me grab you a coffee," Emily said, her hands shaking slightly as she poured his cup. "So, what's been going on with you? Still managing the chaos at this place?" Dwayne asked, his eyes genuinely interested. Emily hesitated for a moment before responding, unsure if she should share her frustrations. But there was something about Dwayne's presence that made her feel like she could trust him. After all, he'd been kind to her before, and she couldn't help but feel like he saw something in her that others didn't. "Well," Emily began, taking a deep breath, "it's been tough. Work, I mean. Things are kind of tense around here. The manager, Rachel, she's not exactly a fan of mine these days." She sighed, swirling the coffee in her cup. "It's like I can't do anything right, and I feel like everything's falling apart." Dwayne listened intently, nodding as she spoke. His gaze was kind but direct. "I know how that feels. Sometimes, the harder you try, the worse things seem to get. I've been in your shoes more than once, you know. It's hard to feel like you're giving it your all, and then have people turn on you." Emily was taken aback by how much he seemed to understand. Yeah, that's exactly it. I don't know what to do anymore. I've been here for so long, and it feels like things will never change. Sometimes, the hardest thing is realizing that change is necessary, Dwayne said thoughtfully. You can't always expect things to stay the same. Life's unpredictable that way. The words struck Emily like a bolt of lightning. Was he talking about her life? Her job at Mel's diner? Her dreams? She had always thought that change was something that happened to other people, not someone like her. But hearing Dwayne say it, hearing the conviction in his voice, made her wonder if maybe she was on the verge of something new, something bigger. As the conversation continued, Emily felt a growing sense of possibility. Dwayne wasn't just offering sympathy, he was offering a glimpse of something different. Something better. He wasn't offering her a solution, but he was giving her permission to dream. Dwayne, Emily stopped, unsure of how to put her thoughts into words. I don't know what to do with my life anymore. I've spent so many years just trying to make ends meet, and now I'm not even sure if I'm living the life I want. You know, Dwayne said, leaning in a little closer, sometimes the hardest part is deciding what you want. And once you figure that out, you just have to go for it. It won't be easy, but that's how you make things happen. Life isn't about staying comfortable, it's about pushing through those uncomfortable moments. I had to leave the safe path myself to get to where I am now. The words lingered in the air, and for the first time in a long while, Emily felt something stir inside her. She had always played it safe. She had always stayed within the boundaries of her small world. But Dwayne was right, if she kept doing the same thing, she would never find out what more life had to offer. I guess you're right, Emily said quietly, her mind racing with possibilities. Maybe it's time for a change. Dwayne smiled, standing up to leave. I hope you find what you're looking for, Emily. And don't be afraid to take that leap. Sometimes, the best things in life come from the biggest risks. With that, he left, his parting words hanging in the air. Emily stood there for a long moment, staring out the window, her mind spinning. She knew this wasn't just another ordinary night. Something had shifted, something deep within her. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure, her journey was about to change forever. The following days after Dwayne's visit felt like a blur for Emily. She couldn't quite process what had happened. It was as if the weight of his words had left an indelible mark on her, one that pushed her to rethink everything about her life. The once familiar routine of waiting tables, refilling coffee mugs, and exchanging pleasantries with customers now seemed trivial. Every corner of the diner felt suffocating, as if she were trapped in a cage of routine, and she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more out there, more for her future. Yet, while she began to entertain the idea of change, the pressure from Rachel was mounting. That constant disapproving gaze, the extra shifts she'd been forced to take, the lack of appreciation, every glance, every word, felt like a reminder that she wasn't in control of her own destiny. She had been trying to stay afloat, but the waves were growing bigger, and Emily felt like she was barely treading water. And then, one Friday afternoon, everything finally came crashing down. The diner was buzzing with the usual lunch rush. Plates clattered, orders were shouted across the kitchen, and the hum of conversation filled the air. Emily was moving quickly, balancing trays of food and drinks, trying to keep up with the chaos of the afternoon. She had become accustomed to the frenzy, but today, it felt more oppressive than ever. As she reached the back of the diner to grab another order, Rachel intercepted her. "Emily," Rachel began, her voice tight. "We need to talk. Now." Emily's stomach sank. She had been expecting something like this for days, but the anxiety that washed over her still caught her off guard. She followed Rachel into the small office at the back, her heart racing. "I don't think this is working anymore," Rachel said bluntly, not wasting any time with pleasantries. "Your performance has been slipping. I've given you extra shifts, I've tried to be patient, but you've become a distraction, Emily. And frankly, I'm tired of it." Emily stood there, frozen. She had always worked hard, given everything she had to the job, but now, it seemed like nothing she did was enough. Rachel, I don't understand. I've been doing my best. I've been putting in the hours. It's not about hours, Emily, Rachel snapped, her face hardening. It's about attitude. You've been distracted, off your game. You're not focused, and I've had enough of it. The words hit like a slap in the face, the sting of rejection sharper than any customer's complaint. Emily opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. She couldn't believe this was happening. She had worked so hard, tried so many times to prove herself, and yet here she was, on the verge of losing everything. I think it's time for you to go, Rachel finished, her voice cold and final. You're fired. Emily felt the floor shift beneath her, as though the ground was crumbling away. She took a step back, but her legs felt unsteady. Firing her? After everything? After how hard she had worked? How could Rachel just throw all of that away? You can pack up your things and leave, Rachel added, already turning away. The words were like daggers, each one deeper than the last. But Emily stood there, numb, unable to do anything except watch Rachel walk out of the room. Her breath caught in her throat, and she felt her body tremble as the weight of the moment pressed down on her. It was over. She had lost her job. The safety net she had clung to for so long was gone. But somewhere, deep inside her, a spark ignited. Dwayne's words echoed in her mind. Sometimes, the best things in life come from the biggest risks. She had heard it then, but now, it felt like a truth she couldn't ignore any longer. Her life wasn't meant to stay stuck in this cycle of disappointment and dissatisfaction. Maybe this was the push she needed to finally break free. Emily took a shaky breath, wiped the tears that had formed at the corners of her eyes, and walked out of the office. Her mind was racing with what-ifs, with fear and uncertainty. But one thing was clear, she couldn't go back to the way things were. She grabbed her purse, her hands still trembling, and walked out of the diner for the last time. As she stepped out into the bright afternoon sunlight, it felt like she was stepping into a new world. She didn't know what came next, didn't know how she would find her footing, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like she had a choice. The road ahead was unclear, but she was ready to take that first step into the unknown. As she walked down the street, Emily pulled out her phone. Without thinking, she opened her contacts and found the number she had saved long ago, Dwayne Johnson's number. Her thumb hovered over the screen for a moment before she typed a quick message. I don't know what to do next, but I know I can't stay where I am. Any advice for someone who's lost everything? She hit send before she could overthink it, then stuffed the phone back into her pocket. Maybe it was a long shot. Maybe he wouldn't respond at all. But the thought of reaching out, of asking for guidance, gave her a small sense of hope. The world felt bigger than ever before. The future, once shrouded in uncertainty, now held endless possibilities. And then, as if the universe was listening, her phone buzzed. I've been waiting for you to ask. Let's talk soon. Don't give up yet. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The next few days felt like an emotional roller coaster. Emily found herself walking a thin line between hope and fear. After getting Dwayne's message, she spent hours contemplating what to do next. Should she take him seriously? Or was it just a kind gesture from a stranger who had no real connection to her life? But deep down, she knew that something had shifted in her. Her circumstances had changed, and with that change came a renewed sense of determination. She didn't want to sit idly by and wait for things to happen. She was done with feeling trapped. Emily was ready for something new, something better. But she had no idea where to begin. The following day, after spending hours updating her resume and scrolling through job listings, Emily found herself sitting in her apartment, feeling stuck. She had been a waitress for so long that she didn't know what other skills she could offer. All she had known was this life, this small, limited world of silver trays and greasy kitchen smells. Yet the thought of going back to Mel's diner was unbearable. She couldn't go back to a place where she felt invisible, where her hard work wasn't appreciated. Then, as if by fate, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't just a simple text from Dwayne. It was a call. "Hey, Emily, it's Dwayne. Got a second?" His voice was calm, confident. It felt like a lifeline. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She had been anticipating his call, but now that it was happening, she didn't know what to say. What did he want from her? Was this some kind of mentorship? Or was he just reaching out because he felt bad for her? "Hi, Dwayne," Emily replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Yeah, I have a second." "What's up?" "I saw your message," Dwayne said, his tone serious but warm. "And I think it's time we talk about your next steps. It's clear you're not happy where you're at, and honestly, I get that. We all have moments when we feel stuck. I've been there. But I think you can make something better of this. You just need to know where to start." Emily sat up straighter, the tension in her shoulders easing a little. "I don't even know where to begin. I mean, I've been waiting tables for years. I don't have a lot of experience with anything else." "Don't sell yourself short," Dwayne said. "You have more skills than you think. You've got a great work ethic. That's something valuable, and it's something that can translate to a lot of different jobs. But beyond that, you've got something even more important, people skills. You've been able to connect with your customers, handle tough situations, and keep things running smoothly under pressure. That's not easy, and a lot of people can't do that." Emily felt a flicker of hope rise inside her. She had always felt that the work she did in the diner was insignificant, but hearing Dwayne recognize it felt validating. Maybe she wasn't as invisible as she had thought. "You've got something that's rare," Dwayne continued. "And you need to take that and find a way to use it in a new environment. Look, I've got some connections, and I can help you get your foot in the door at some places that could use someone with your skills." "Are you serious?" Emily asked, barely believing what she was hearing. "You'd really help me like that?" "Absolutely," Dwayne said, his voice warm. "I know how it feels to need a break. Everyone needs someone to believe in them, especially when they don't believe in themselves yet. You're not alone in this. So, what do you say? Let's make a plan." The offer was surreal. Emily had heard about celebrities helping people in need, but she had never imagined it would happen to her. The thought of Dwayne Johnson, someone she had once seen as an untouchable star, offering to help her, a regular girl from a small town, felt like a dream. But there was something in his voice that made her believe it was real. "I don't even know what to say," Emily murmured, overwhelmed. "This feels too good to be true." Dwayne laughed, a genuine, rich laugh that filled her with warmth. "It's not too good to be true, Emily. You deserve it. And if you're willing to put in the work, I'll be here to guide you. But it's up to you to take the first step. I can't do that for you." Emily felt a rush of emotion flood through her, gratitude, relief, even disbelief. For so long, she had felt like she was fighting an uphill battle alone. But now, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she had thought. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I don't know what to say. This means more than you know." "It's all good," Dwayne replied. "We're in this together now. So, here's what we're going to do next. I want you to take some time and figure out what you really want. Don't rush it. Just take a step back and think about where you see yourself. Do you want to stay in the service industry, or is there something else you're passionate about?" Emily nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. What did she want? What was she passionate about? She had never given herself permission to ask those questions before. "And I'll set up some introductions for you," Dwayne continued. "But remember, this is your journey. I'm just here to help you get started. The rest is up to you. Thank you, Dwayne, Emily said again, her heart full. I won't let you down. I know you won't, he said with a smile in his voice. Take care, Emily. I'll talk to you soon. As the call ended, Emily sat in silence for a few moments, letting the weight of the conversation sink in. Her future was no longer uncertain. She had a path in front of her, and it was one that she could walk confidently. For the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful, like she had control over her destiny. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of everything she had ever wanted. The following days were a whirlwind for Emily. She spent hours reflecting on the conversation with Dwayne, allowing herself to imagine a future that felt both daunting and exciting. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to think beyond the confines of the diner and the life she had known. What if she could do something bigger? What if she could break free from the rut she had fallen into? She wasn't entirely sure what path to take, but Emily had never felt this kind of hope before. She was determined not to squander the opportunity Dwayne had given her, even if it was just a first step into the unknown. Determined to explore her options, Emily decided to take Dwayne's advice. She needed time to figure out what she truly wanted. She had spent years working in the service industry, but what else was there for her? She had an inkling that her skills could be applied in other areas, but she didn't know where to start. Her first step was simple: reflection. She found herself sitting at her small kitchen table with a cup of coffee in hand, scribbling down thoughts in a notebook she'd kept tucked away for years. She thought about the moments in her life when she felt truly alive, when she felt like she was making a difference. It wasn't just about waiting tables, it was about connecting with people, making them feel valued and heard. She had a knack for that, she realized. She could help people, listen to them, and make them feel special. But could that be a career? Could it lead to something beyond the confines of a small diner? The possibilities seemed endless, and for the first time, she allowed herself to dream big. Maybe she could work in customer relations or become a motivational speaker, someone who helped people find their confidence, just like Dwayne had helped her. Maybe she could even go back to school, pursue something completely different, and start fresh. As the days went by, Emily took small steps toward making her new life a reality. She enrolled in a few online courses, focusing on communication and leadership. She began looking for jobs that might align with her skills, but more importantly, she spent time learning about herself, what she was passionate about, what drove her, what she wanted out of life. And then, a week later, Dwayne called again. Hey, Emily. How are you doing? His voice was a comforting presence on the other end of the line. I'm doing better, she replied, a smile creeping onto her face. I've been thinking a lot about what you said. I've been trying to figure out what I want. It's overwhelming, but it feels good to have a direction. I'm glad to hear that, Dwayne said. So, what's next for you? What are you thinking? Emily paused, taking a deep breath. She had spent so much time contemplating what she wanted, but it felt different now, like she was stepping into a new version of herself. She felt stronger, more confident. I've decided to go back to school. I've been researching programs that focus on personal development and leadership. I want to help people, inspire them, make them feel seen, just like I've been helped. Dwayne's voice brightened with approval. That sounds amazing. It's like you're on the right path, Emily. And I'm proud of you for taking that step. I can help you with the process, give you some advice if you need it. Emily felt her chest tighten with gratitude. This was more than just a call for career advice, it felt like someone genuinely cared about her success. For so long, she had felt invisible, overlooked by the world, but now, it was as if the world was opening up to her. Thank you, Dwayne, Emily said, her voice thick with emotion. I don't know what to say. I feel like I've been given a second chance. You've got this, Emily, Dwayne reassured her. The hard part is over. You've made the decision, and now it's time to keep moving forward. Don't stop believing in yourself, okay? Keep that fire alive." She felt a surge of determination at his words. This wasn't just about finding a job or a career, it was about finding herself, reclaiming the power she had lost along the way. After hanging up, Emily sat in silence for a few moments, her mind racing with excitement. There was a renewed sense of purpose in her heart now. The path ahead was still unclear, but it felt brighter than it ever had before. The dream she had once thought impossible, of becoming someone who made a difference, was now within reach. One evening, as she sat down with a cup of tea, her phone buzzed again. It was a message from an unknown number, and when she opened it, her heart skipped a beat. "Emily, it's Rachel. I know we've had our differences, but I wanted to reach out. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and I realize now that I didn't handle things the best way. I'm sorry for how everything went down. You were a valuable member of the team, and I regret letting you go the way I did." Emily stared at the message for a long moment, unsure how to respond. Part of her wanted to send a harsh reply, to tell Rachel everything she had felt in the weeks since she was fired. But another part of her recognized that this was just another moment of growth. She had learned so much about herself since that day, and it felt like this message was a sign that she was truly moving on. After a few moments, Emily typed her reply. She hit send, feeling a sense of closure wash over her. She was no longer bound to the past. Her future was bright, and she was ready to embrace it fully. As Emily prepared to take the next steps in her journey, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. From the girl who had been fired without warning, unsure of her future, to a woman with a clear vision for her life, she had come a long way. The road ahead would be challenging, but Emily knew that with determination, support, and the belief that anything was possible, she was capable of achieving greatness. And in that moment, she realized something even more important: she wasn't alone. She had support, she had guidance, and most of all, she had herself. Emily spent the next few weeks immersed in a whirlwind of self-discovery. She was determined to use the time to focus on herself, carve out a new path, and leave the diner life behind. Her initial fear and self-doubt had started to subside, replaced by a deep, quiet determination. It wasn't easy, but each day she felt stronger, more confident in her ability to shape her own future. She had signed up for an online personal development course, enrolled in a leadership training program, and even applied to a couple of local seminars. It was strange, at first, like she was trying to fit into a world that felt both unfamiliar and exhilarating, but it also felt right. Every new lesson, every piece of advice, felt like another small brick she was laying in the foundation of her new life. But the path ahead wasn't without its hurdles. Emily still had moments when the weight of her past would threaten to pull her back into old habits. She found herself second-guessing her choices, wondering if this was all too much to take on. Sometimes, she'd look at her small apartment and wonder if she'd ever truly break free from the limitations of her past. But every time doubt crept in, she reminded herself of Dwayne's words. "The hard part is over. Keep moving forward." That was her mantra now. Keep moving forward. Her phone buzzed again one afternoon as she was reviewing a course module on leadership. She grabbed it, her heart jumping slightly as she saw Dwayne's name pop up on the screen. "Hey, Emily. How's everything going?" "Hey, Dwayne. It's going well," she replied, a smile tugging at her lips. "I've been diving into the courses, and it's been a lot, but I'm making progress." "I'm glad to hear that." Dwayne's voice was always a comforting presence. "I was actually calling to check in on you. I've been thinking about you, and I wanted to see if you're still considering pursuing some of those other job opportunities we talked about." Emily hesitated, unsure of where to start. She had been so caught up in the personal development courses that she hadn't actively searched for new jobs yet. But now that Dwayne was asking, she realized it might be time to start taking real steps towards something tangible. I've been focusing a lot on the personal development side of things, she admitted. But I think I'm ready to start looking at some actual job options. I'm just not sure where to begin. Alright, Dwayne said, his voice turning serious. Here's the thing. You've got the right mindset. That's step one. Now it's time to take action. What you're learning right now will give you the tools, but you've got to go out there and put yourself in front of the right people. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't entirely sure how to put herself in front of the right people. The idea of networking, of stepping out into the professional world with confidence, was both thrilling and terrifying. What if they saw her as just a waitress who had gotten lucky? Don't overthink it, Dwayne reassured her, as though reading her mind. You're already ahead of the game. Most people don't realize how much of their success is about relationships and connections. I've got a few people in mind who might be able to give you some advice or even help you out with job leads. Really? Emily asked, her voice filled with both surprise and hope. You do that? Of course, Dwayne said with a smile. I wouldn't offer advice if I wasn't ready to back it up with action. Just trust me on this. Let me make a few calls and see what we can do. But remember, this is all about showing up. Putting yourself out there and believing in your value. Emily could hardly believe what she was hearing. Her world, once confined to the walls of Mel's diner, was suddenly expanding beyond measure. Dwayne Johnson, a world-renowned celebrity, was offering to help her in ways she never imagined possible. Thank you, Dwayne, she said, her voice breaking with emotion. You've already done so much for me. I don't know how to repay you. You don't need to repay me, he said. Just pay it forward someday when you're in a position to help someone else. That's all I ask. After the call ended, Emily sat in stunned silence. The weight of his words, show up, believe in your value, lingered in her mind like a new gospel she would live by. She had already started her journey, but now, with Dwayne's encouragement, she felt more confident than ever before. Her first step toward her new life came just a few days later when she received an email from one of Dwayne's contacts. The subject line read, "Let's connect, a potential opportunity for you." Emily's fingers trembled as she clicked open the message. The email was from a local business owner named Lisa Reynolds, a woman with a background in personal coaching and leadership training. She had received Emily's resume through Dwayne's referral and was interested in speaking with her further about potential job opportunities within her company. I think your skill set would be a good fit for our team, Lisa had written. We're looking for someone who has experience with customer service but also has the potential for growth in leadership. I'd love to set up a meeting. Emily's pulse quickened as she read through the email. This was it. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The opportunity she had dreamed of was finally knocking at her door. She took a deep breath, feeling a rush of excitement, but also a twinge of nervousness. This was no longer the safety of the diner, where she could blend in and stay unnoticed. This was a chance to step into a new world, a world where she was expected to lead, to inspire, and to make an impact. She stared at the email for a few more seconds, processing what it meant. Then, without hesitation, she hit reply. I would love to meet and discuss this opportunity further. Thank you for considering me. Looking forward to speaking with you soon. As she hit send, a sense of calm washed over her. She was no longer the girl stuck in a dead-end job. She was someone with potential. Someone worthy of being noticed. And this was just the beginning. The days leading up to Emily's meeting with Lisa Reynolds were filled with anticipation. Each morning, as she sat at her small kitchen table, sipping her coffee, she felt the weight of the opportunity ahead. She had never been one to embrace the unknown with open arms, but this time felt different. She could feel the wind of change in the air, and it was both exhilarating and terrifying. Emily spent hours preparing for the meeting. She carefully reviewed the email exchange with Lisa, researched the company, and practiced answers to potential interview questions. She knew that this was her chance to prove that she wasn't just the waitress who got lucky, that she had the skills and drive to thrive in a new field. The night before the meeting, Emily couldn't sleep. Her mind raced with worries. What if she wasn't prepared enough? What if Lisa didn't see her potential? What if this was all a dream, and she would end up back at the diner, stuck in the same old routine? But then she remembered Dwayne's words, "You've got this. Believe in your value." That thought calmed her. She had worked hard to get here, and no matter the outcome, she had already come so far. This meeting wasn't just about the job, it was about her growth, her commitment to change. The next morning, Emily woke up early and dressed carefully in a professional outfit she had bought for the occasion. She had never been one for flashy clothes, but she knew that first impressions mattered. She wore a navy blouse, black pants, and a simple pair of flats, nothing too fancy, but polished enough to show that she took the opportunity seriously. Her nerves were on edge as she left her apartment, but a deep sense of determination pushed her forward. She wasn't going to let fear control her anymore. She was taking control of her life. When she arrived at the address in the email, a sleek office building in the heart of downtown, Emily's heart pounded in her chest. She stood outside for a moment, taking a deep breath, before walking through the front doors. The lobby was clean and modern, a stark contrast to the diner where she had spent the last few years of her life. "Can I help you?" The receptionist greeted her with a friendly smile. "I'm here for a meeting with Lisa Reynolds," Emily said, her voice steady, though her palms were slick with nervous sweat. "Of course. She's expecting you. Right this way." As she followed the receptionist down the hallway, Emily's nerves flared up again. This was it, the moment that would either catapult her into a new life or send her crashing back into her old one. She tried to calm her thoughts, reminding herself that this was just a conversation. Lisa was just a person, just like her. The receptionist led Emily into a conference room where Lisa was waiting. Lisa Reynolds stood up from her desk and smiled warmly. She was a tall, elegant woman in her late 40s, with sharp eyes and a confident demeanor. She immediately put Emily at ease with her welcoming presence. "Emily. It's so nice to meet you in person," Lisa said, extending her hand. "Please, take a seat. I've been looking forward to our conversation." "Thank you for having me," Emily replied, shaking her hand and sitting down. "I really appreciate the opportunity." Lisa gave her a nod of understanding. "Of course. Let's dive right in. I've read through your resume, and I'm impressed with your background in customer service. But what really caught my attention was your passion for personal development. I think that could be a real asset to our team." Emily felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had feared that her experience as a waitress might overshadow her potential, but Lisa was focusing on her growth and the skills she had developed. It felt like a breakthrough. "Thank you," Emily said. "I've always believed in the power of connection and communication. I've spent years working with people, trying to make them feel heard and valued. I think those skills could be useful in a leadership role." Lisa leaned forward slightly, her eyes focused. "Absolutely. That's exactly what we need. We're a growing company, and we need someone who can connect with people, build relationships, and inspire others. You've got that, I can see it already." Emily smiled, feeling the tension in her shoulders start to ease. The conversation shifted to her experiences at the diner, her work ethic, and the personal development courses she had taken. Lisa seemed genuinely interested, and Emily felt a growing sense of confidence. She was no longer just a waitress, she was someone with a vision, someone who was capable of more. "I have to say, Emily," Lisa said as the meeting drew to a close, "I'm impressed. I think you've got what it takes to be part of our team. I'd like to offer you a position as an assistant manager. It's a leadership role, and it's a bit of a jump, but I think you're ready for it." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected this. A leadership role? She was still wrapping her mind around the idea that someone believed in her enough to offer her a job like this. "Are you sure?" Emily asked, her voice shaky with disbelief. "I mean, I don't have a ton of experience in management." Lisa smiled gently. "I'm not looking for someone who has everything figured out. I'm looking for someone who has the right attitude, the willingness to learn, and the ability to grow. You've got that in spades." Emily sat there for a moment, letting the offer sink in. It felt surreal, like a dream she was afraid to wake up from. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for, her first real step into a new life. "Yes," she said, her voice stronger now. "I'd love to accept the position." Lisa smiled, extending her hand once more. "Welcome to the team, Emily. We're excited to have you on board." As Emily shook Lisa's hand, a rush of emotions flooded over her. She had done it. She had taken the leap, and it had paid off. This wasn't just a job. It was a new beginning. Emily felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension as she walked out of Lisa's office. She had accepted the assistant manager position, but it still didn't seem real. It was as if her world had shifted on its axis in a single afternoon. The woman who had spent years pouring coffee and clearing plates at Mel's diner was now stepping into the world of leadership, responsibility, and corporate culture. She sat down on a nearby bench, taking a few moments to breathe. She glanced at her phone, checking the time. It was late afternoon, and her shift at the diner would start soon. The contrast between the two worlds felt stark. But even with this new job, she couldn't deny the pull of familiarity. There were people she still cared about at the diner: Maggie, the older waitress with a heart of gold; Travis, the cook who had become like a brother to her. Emily wasn't sure how to reconcile her new life with the old one. Was it possible to leave the diner behind without leaving a part of herself there as well? Shaking off her thoughts, Emily texted Dwayne. "I got the job. I'm an assistant manager now." She didn't have to wait long for a response. "Yes. I knew you could do it. So proud of you. This is just the beginning." Emily grinned at her phone screen. Dwayne's words had always been a steady source of encouragement, and she couldn't deny that his belief in her had given her the strength to take this leap. She quickly typed back, "Thank you for everything. I couldn't have done it without your support." The truth was, Emily had been terrified when she first walked away from the diner. She had no idea what the future held, and she was certain that she would fail. But now, after her meeting with Lisa, the first tangible step into a world outside of the diner, the world felt a little more open. The path was no longer as dark and uncertain. She was standing in a new place, one she had worked hard to reach. That evening, Emily returned to Mel's diner for her shift, but she didn't feel the usual sense of dread. It was strange, walking through those doors knowing that this could very well be her last night here. Her eyes scanned the familiar space, taking in the worn countertops, the neon sign that buzzed in the corner, the old jukebox playing quietly in the background. It was home in a way, unpredictable, chaotic, but comfortable. Still, it was hard to ignore the sense that she had outgrown it. She spotted Maggie behind the counter, wiping down the register. Maggie gave her a warm smile when she saw Emily approach. "Well, look at you, all dressed up," Maggie remarked, eyeing Emily's professional attire with a knowing look. "What's going on, kid?" "I have something to tell you," Emily replied, her voice a bit hesitant. I'm moving on." Maggie raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean? Like, leaving?" "Yeah," Emily said. She took a deep breath, the weight of the words settling in her chest. "I got a job offer today. I'm going to be an assistant manager at a company downtown." Maggie's face softened with surprise. "Well, I'll be damned," she said, her voice rich with emotion. "I knew you were meant for something bigger than this. You deserve it." Emily's heart warmed at Maggie's words. "Thanks. But it feels kind of strange, you know. walking away from all this. It's been my life for so long. I get it, Maggie said, her tone thoughtful. But you've always had more potential than you realized. You're not just meant to stay behind this counter, honey. You've got leadership written all over you. Emily smiled, grateful for the older woman's unwavering support. It was clear that Maggie had always believed in her, long before she believed in herself. As the night went on, Emily kept busy, trying to keep her mind off the shift. The usual banter, the noise of the busy diner, the clinking of dishes, was oddly comforting. But she couldn't deny the sense that she was now seeing it all through different eyes. She couldn't stay in this small world forever. She had bigger things to do. By the time her shift ended, Emily was exhausted, but a strange calm had settled over her. She'd said her goodbyes to the people she'd worked with for years, including Travis, who gave her a bear hug as she walked out the door. "Good luck, Em," Travis said, grinning. "You better not forget about us little people when you're running the show." "I won't forget," she promised. "And I'll visit, I swear." It felt like a symbolic exit. She was walking away from the diner for good, but she wasn't closing the door behind her. She was simply opening a new one that led to a life she had dreamed about but had never known how to reach. That night, as Emily stood on the front step of her apartment building, looking up at the stars, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The kind of hope that came from moving forward, from breaking free from the past and stepping into something new. She didn't know what the future would hold, but she wasn't afraid anymore. She was ready. Ready for the challenges, the unknowns, and the triumphs that lay ahead. And with that, Emily knew that her story was only just beginning. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The following weeks were a whirlwind of excitement and adaptation for Emily. Her new role as assistant manager at the corporate office was everything she had hoped for and more. The work was challenging, fast-paced, and intellectually stimulating. Each day presented new opportunities to prove herself, to step out of her comfort zone, and to grow. It was a far cry from the clattering dishes and quick orders of the diner, but in its own way, it felt just as demanding. Despite her excitement, there were moments when Emily couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. The office was different from the diner in so many ways. The people were polished, professional, and well-versed in the language of business. They spoke in terms like synergy, KPIs, and strategic alignment, words that still felt foreign on Emily's tongue. Her first few days were full of meetings and introductions. Lisa, the manager who had hired her, was kind but kept a busy schedule, often sending Emily off to handle smaller tasks on her own. It wasn't that Emily wasn't capable, it was just that she didn't always know what to do when the responsibilities grew larger and more complex. She'd never been asked to oversee a team or manage a project like this before. One of her biggest challenges was learning how to communicate effectively with her new colleagues. At the diner, Emily had been used to straightforward conversations. But in the office, things were different. Everything was more formal, and the stakes felt higher. She found herself second-guessing every email she sent, trying to make sure it was professional enough, clear enough, concise enough. Still, she powered through, reminding herself that she had earned her spot here. The feeling of inadequacy crept in at times, especially when she found herself struggling with tasks that felt out of her league. One afternoon, she was asked to prepare a report for an upcoming meeting, a task that felt incredibly daunting. She had never worked with spreadsheets in such a formal way, and the sheer volume of data left her staring at her computer screen for over an hour, unsure of where to begin. Doubt began to creep in, and she couldn't help but think back to the diner. Could she really do this? What if she wasn't cut out for this role? What if she had taken a step too big, too soon? The familiar fear of failure lingered, pushing her to the edge of panic. As she sat there, the room around her feeling more suffocating by the second, she reached for her phone. Without thinking, she texted Dwayne. "I'm not sure I can do this. Everything feels so much harder than I thought it would." Within seconds, her phone buzzed with a response. "Hey, you've got this, Emily. You've always been capable, even when you didn't think you were. Take a deep breath. This is just another challenge for you to overcome. You've come so far already. Don't let a spreadsheet scare you." The words brought a sense of calm she hadn't realized she needed. Dwayne's belief in her had been unwavering since the moment they first met, and reading his words gave her the strength to push past her doubts. Taking a deep breath, Emily sat up straighter and returned to the screen in front of her. She decided to break down the report into smaller chunks. Instead of trying to tackle everything at once, she focused on one section at a time. Slowly but surely, the data began to make sense. She found herself creating charts and analyzing trends, her confidence slowly growing with each step. By the time the report was finished, Emily was surprised by how much she had accomplished. That evening, as she reviewed the finished document, she felt a small sense of pride. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. She had taken on a challenge, faced her fears, and succeeded in spite of her doubts. She sent the report off to Lisa, who responded with a simple, "Great work, Emily. Let's discuss it tomorrow." The validation was a relief, but Emily knew that the journey wasn't over. There would be more challenges ahead, bigger tasks, tougher situations, and moments of self-doubt. But for the first time, she realized that she could handle them. She didn't need to have all the answers right away. She just needed to keep moving forward, step by step. A few days later, Emily was assigned a larger project that would require her to manage a small team. The task involved organizing an event for the company's upcoming product launch. She was excited but also intimidated. Managing people was a whole new ball game. How could she lead a team when she was still figuring out the ropes herself? But there was no backing out now. She had made a commitment to this new life, and she wasn't going to let fear stop her. The first meeting with her team was a mix of nerves and determination. Emily introduced herself to the group of 4 colleagues, all of whom were more experienced in the corporate world than she was. She could feel the weight of their expectations, but instead of faltering, she took charge of the room. She outlined the task at hand, delegated responsibilities, and encouraged open communication. Despite her nerves, Emily found that she could lead with authority and compassion, just as she had when managing customers at the diner. As the days went on, the project began to take shape. Emily stayed on top of the details, ensuring that everything was moving forward according to plan. She worked late into the evenings, reviewing budgets, confirming vendor schedules, and double-checking event timelines. Though the work was exhausting, it also made her feel alive in a way she hadn't expected. This was what she had been looking for, the feeling of accomplishment, of being able to truly make an impact. The day of the event arrived, and Emily was a bundle of nerves. The team had worked tirelessly to pull everything together, and now it was time for the real test. Would everything go according to plan? Would her leadership be enough to make the event a success? As the first guests began to arrive, Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The event looked polished, the atmosphere was buzzing with energy, and the product launch was a hit. By the end of the night, she received compliments from her team and superiors, and even Lisa gave her a thumbs up. "Well done, Emily," Lisa said with a smile. "You really stepped up." But even as she basked in the success of the night, Emily knew that the challenges weren't over. There would be more obstacles, more struggles, and more doubts along the way. But she was ready. She had faced her fears and come out stronger on the other side. And now, nothing seemed impossible. As the weeks went by, Emily's confidence continued to grow in her new role. She had mastered the art of balancing her responsibilities, managing her team, and staying ahead of deadlines. Her colleagues had started to respect her for her determination and leadership, and Lisa's trust in her seemed to grow with every task she completed. But with success came a new set of challenges. Emily began to feel the weight of her responsibilities more acutely. The pressure to keep up with expectations, to always be on top of things, and to constantly prove herself was beginning to take a toll. One afternoon, Emily was sitting in her office, reviewing a new set of numbers for the upcoming quarter. The spreadsheets were filled with data that required her to make critical decisions. She couldn't help but feel the familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach. She hadn't been in the corporate world long enough to know exactly how these numbers would play out, and yet the stakes felt higher than ever. The fear of making a mistake, of failing her team or letting down Lisa, was overwhelming. She took a deep breath and tried to focus. "You've got this," she whispered to herself. But the words felt hollow, like a mantra that couldn't quite lift the weight off her shoulders. Her phone buzzed on the desk, breaking her concentration. It was a text from Dwayne. "Hey, how's it going? I'm thinking of swinging by the city this weekend. What do you think?" Emily's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't seen Dwayne in weeks. The thought of spending time with him, away from the pressures of work, was suddenly very appealing. She quickly typed back. "That sounds great. I could definitely use a break." She knew that seeing him would be a welcome distraction, a chance to relax and recharge. Emily was beginning to realize how much she needed these moments, those small moments of peace that could ground her when everything else felt chaotic. As the weekend approached, Emily looked forward to seeing Dwayne more than she cared to admit. But even with the promise of a fun getaway, the stress of her job continued to weigh on her. She was constantly juggling tasks and trying to meet deadlines. The lines between her personal life and work life were starting to blur. It was hard to leave work at work when there was so much to keep track of. When Dwayne arrived on Friday evening, Emily felt an immediate sense of relief. His presence had always been a source of comfort, and this time was no different. They decided to take a walk around the city, enjoying the fresh air and the quiet hum of the evening. As they strolled, Emily found herself opening up about the pressures she had been facing at work. "I don't know, Dwayne. It feels like I can't keep up sometimes. Like everyone around me has it all figured out, and I'm just trying to keep from drowning," she admitted. Dwayne listened intently, his eyes softening with understanding. "Emily, you're doing great. You've come so far in such a short amount of time. But I get it. The pressure can feel overwhelming." "I know, but I keep wondering if I'm good enough for this role," Emily confessed, her voice tinged with frustration. "What if I'm just a waitress pretending to be a manager? What if I mess it all up?" Dwayne stopped walking and turned to face her. "Look at me," he said gently. "You're not pretending. You've worked your ass off to get where you are, and that's something no one can take away from you. Sure, the job is tough. It's meant to be. But you're learning, you're growing, and that's all anyone can ask for." Emily smiled, feeling a surge of warmth in her chest. "I guess I just need to hear that sometimes. You don't have to do this alone, Dwayne added, his tone sincere. "You've got me, and you've got your team. You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your own." His words resonated with her deeply, and for the first time in a while, Emily felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe she didn't have to have all the answers right now. Maybe she just needed to trust herself a little more. The rest of the weekend was a welcome escape. Emily and Dwayne spent time exploring the city, catching up, and enjoying each other's company. For those brief moments, the pressure of work faded into the background. She found herself laughing more than she had in weeks, and she realized how much she had missed their time together. But as the weekend came to an end, reality hit once again. Emily returned to her apartment with a sense of dread. The emails, the meetings, the responsibilities, it was all waiting for her. It wasn't that she didn't love the work, she did. But the constant pressure to be perfect was wearing her down. On Monday morning, Emily walked into the office with a sense of determination. She was going to face the challenges head-on. No more doubts, no more hesitation. She had proven to herself before that she was capable, and now it was time to prove it again. Her first task of the day was a big one. Lisa had given her the responsibility of managing a new project, one that involved coordinating with other departments to launch a new marketing campaign. Emily knew it was a huge opportunity, but it also felt like an enormous challenge. There were so many moving parts, and she had never been tasked with overseeing something so complicated. She spent the entire day meeting with different teams, gathering input, and organizing details. Each conversation brought new questions and new problems to solve, but Emily took it all in stride. She didn't have all the answers yet, but she was getting closer. With each step, she was learning something new, and with each obstacle, she was becoming stronger. By the time the day was over, Emily was exhausted but satisfied. The project was far from finished, but she could already see the pieces coming together. She was moving forward, and that was all that mattered. But as she walked out of the office that evening, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was on the horizon. The pressure was only going to increase, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. Still, she knew one thing for sure: she wasn't going to back down. She had come too far to give up now. She had always been someone who thrived under pressure, but this was different. The constant demands from upper management, the meetings, the emails, the deadlines, it was all starting to blur together. She felt like she was being pulled in 100 different directions at once. Every time she thought she had a handle on one thing, something else would come up, and the cycle seemed endless. Even the small victories, like the successful event she had coordinated a few weeks ago, seemed distant. All Emily could focus on now was the next task, the next goal, the next meeting. She was caught in an exhausting whirlwind of expectations, and she was beginning to wonder if she was losing herself in it all. One afternoon, as Emily sat in the break room, sipping her coffee and staring blankly at her phone, her colleague, Jen, walked in. Jen had been with the company for years and was known for being one of the more experienced and level-headed team members. She had a knack for balancing work and life with an almost effortless ease, something Emily admired but couldn't seem to emulate. Jen smiled as she sat down across from Emily. "How's everything going? You seem a little off." Emily shrugged, trying to force a smile. "It's fine. Just busy, you know. A lot on my plate." Jen raised an eyebrow, clearly not convinced. "I know that look. You're not fine. Something's up. What's going on?" Emily hesitated, unsure if she should admit just how overwhelmed she felt. She didn't want to seem weak or incapable. But Jen's genuine concern was hard to ignore, and Emily finally gave in. "I'm just exhausted," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I feel like I'm constantly juggling everything, and it's starting to get to me. I love what I'm doing, but I'm not sure I can keep up with everything. It's like no matter how hard I work, it's never enough." Jen's expression softened, and she leaned forward. "Emily, I get it. I've been there. It's easy to get lost in the grind. But here's the thing, you're not alone in this. You don't have to carry everything on your own. You have a team for a reason." "I know, but I don't want to let anyone down," Emily admitted, looking down at her hands. "I don't want to fail." Jen smiled kindly. "You won't. And you don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep doing your best. It's okay to ask for help, to take a step back when you need it. Nobody expects you to have it all figured out right now." For the first time in a while, Emily felt a small weight lift off her shoulders. It was comforting to hear that someone who had been in her shoes believed in her. But even as she felt reassured, the pressure was still there. It wasn't going to disappear overnight. The next few days were a blur of meetings, decisions, and late nights. Emily's mind was constantly racing, always a few steps ahead of herself, trying to anticipate the next problem before it even happened. She was working harder than ever, but there were moments when she felt like she was losing control. It all came to a head on a Thursday afternoon. Emily had been running from one meeting to the next all day, and by the time the last one ended, she was drained. Her stomach growled with hunger, but she had no energy left to think about food. She stumbled back to her desk, the weight of exhaustion pulling her down. Just as she sat, her phone rang. It was Lisa. "Hey, Emily, do you have a minute?" Lisa's voice was calm, but there was something in her tone that made Emily's heart race. "Yeah, of course," Emily replied, trying to sound more composed than she felt. "I just wanted to check in with you about the project. I've been looking over your progress, and I think we might need to rethink a few things. Some of the timelines are too tight, and we're not meeting some of the benchmarks I was hoping for," Lisa said, her voice steady but firm. Emily felt her stomach drop. She had been working tirelessly, putting in extra hours, trying to keep everything on track. But now, it seemed like nothing was good enough. She could feel the weight of failure pressing down on her. I understand. I'll get on it right away," Emily managed to say, her voice betraying the panic she was feeling inside. "Look, Emily," Lisa continued, "I'm not saying this is a failure. You've been doing great, but I think we need to take a step back and reassess. Don't be too hard on yourself. You're learning, and you're doing better than most would in your position." But those words did little to ease the anxiety building inside Emily. She ended the call and sat back in her chair, staring at her computer screen. Her mind was racing. What if I'm not cut out for this? What if I'm not the person they thought I was? She could feel her chest tightening, her breath becoming shallow. In that moment, Emily realized just how much she had been holding in. She hadn't been taking care of herself. She had been so focused on proving her worth that she had forgotten to listen to her own needs. She had been so worried about letting everyone else down that she had forgotten to take care of her own mental health. Dwayne's words echoed in her mind. "You don't have to do this alone." She had relied on her strength, but it was okay to lean on others. It was okay to take a break. Taking a deep breath, Emily stood up and walked to the break room. She needed a moment, a break from the chaos. She needed to ground herself before she lost her sense of balance completely. It was time to ask for help. The following day, Emily walked into the office with a new sense of purpose. She had made a decision the night before that had been hard to swallow but necessary: she was going to ask for help. For weeks, she had tried to handle everything on her own, convinced that she had to prove herself worthy of her new role. But the truth was, no one could do it all alone, and if she wanted to succeed, she had to acknowledge her limits. As she entered the office, she felt the familiar tension in her shoulders. She wasn't sure how people would perceive her, how they would react to the shift in her approach. Would they see it as a sign of weakness? Or would they respect her for being honest about her struggle? The morning went by slowly, and Emily was lost in her thoughts, trying to figure out exactly how to navigate this new course. Around mid-morning, she got an email from Lisa, requesting an update on the project. Emily had been dreading this moment, but it was time to face the music. She took a deep breath and picked up the phone. Lisa answered on the first ring, her voice calm, as usual. "Emily, what's the status on the project? I know we've had some bumps, but I'm confident we can get things back on track." Emily hesitated for a moment, then took the plunge. "Lisa, I need to be honest with you. I've been pushing myself too hard, and I'm starting to feel like I'm losing control of things. I'm not sure I can handle everything on my own anymore. I think I need some support." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and Emily's heart raced. Was she making a mistake? Had she gone too far in admitting weakness? Finally, Lisa spoke. "Emily, thank you for being upfront with me. I know this job can feel overwhelming, especially when you're managing something this big. But the fact that you're recognizing you need support shows growth. It's something not everyone is capable of doing." Emily felt a rush of relief flood through her. "I really appreciate that, Lisa. I've been trying to do everything, and it's been harder than I anticipated. I want to get this right, and I'm willing to work with others to make that happen. I respect that. You've done a fantastic job so far, and asking for help doesn't take away from that, Lisa replied, her tone warm and reassuring. Let's sit down together and figure out where you need additional support. I'm sure we can work something out. For the first time in what felt like forever, Emily allowed herself to exhale. This was a turning point. The pressure wasn't gone, but acknowledging it had lightened the load. She wasn't alone in this anymore. And with Lisa's help, she felt more confident about moving forward. Later that afternoon, Emily reached out to Jen and a few of her other trusted colleagues. She needed to know where they stood on the project, what they could offer in terms of assistance, and where they saw opportunities for improvement. She wasn't used to asking for help, but it felt different now. She wasn't weak, she was a leader who knew that collaboration was key. By the end of the day, Emily had a clearer picture of what she needed to do. She and Lisa had discussed some realistic deadlines, and she had managed to delegate tasks to her team, trusting that they were capable of handling their parts. She felt a sense of relief as the pressure began to lift, bit by bit. The next morning, Emily walked into the office with a renewed sense of energy. She wasn't facing the project alone anymore, she had her team, her colleagues, and Lisa by her side. It was a huge weight off her shoulders, and for the first time in a while, she felt like she could breathe. But the day wasn't without its challenges. The project was still complicated, and there were plenty of hurdles to overcome. The pressure to succeed was still there, but Emily no longer felt like she was drowning under it. Instead, she had a new perspective. As she sat down to go over the project updates, Dwayne sent her a message, "I'm really proud of you. Keep it up, you've got this." She smiled, reading his words. His support had been a constant, and it meant more than she realized. With him, she had found someone who believed in her when she wasn't sure she believed in herself. His unwavering encouragement had been a lifeline during her darkest moments. Later that week, Emily met with her team to discuss the project's progress. The atmosphere was different. There was a sense of camaraderie, of shared responsibility, and Emily could see how much they had bought into her vision. It wasn't just her project anymore, it was theirs. They were all in this together. "I'm glad we're all on the same page," Emily said during the meeting, her voice steady but filled with gratitude. "I couldn't do this without each of you. Let's keep pushing forward." As the weeks passed, the project began to take shape in a way that Emily hadn't thought possible. With each day, she was learning more about leadership, about collaboration, and about herself. The weight of the job wasn't gone, but she had learned to manage it. She had learned that it was okay to ask for help, and that asking for help didn't mean she was failing, it meant she was smart enough to recognize when she couldn't do everything alone. And with that realization, Emily felt stronger than ever before. She was no longer just the waitress who had stumbled into a management role, she was a leader who had found her way, even through the toughest of challenges. The weeks following Emily's decision to ask for help were filled with steady progress. The project, though still challenging, had shifted into a new phase. Emily found herself more confident, more capable, and more connected to the team. The constant pressure she had once felt was now tempered with a renewed sense of collaboration and shared responsibility. But as the days passed, Emily realized something else. While the work was moving forward, there was still a part of her that hadn't fully healed from the emotional toll the past few months had taken. She had become so focused on the project, so wrapped up in the whirlwind of deadlines and expectations, that she had neglected other parts of her life. The nights were getting longer again. She had once prided herself on the balance she had created between her work and personal life, but now it felt like her world was divided into endless compartments that never seemed to connect. One evening, Emily sat on her balcony, staring out at the city below. The skyline twinkled, peaceful and distant, but inside her, the storm was still brewing. Her phone buzzed with a message from Dwayne. "You're doing great, Emily. I know it's tough, but just remember, one step at a time." Her heart warmed at the words. He always knew what to say, always seemed to be there when she needed it most. His encouragement had become a constant thread in her life, one that kept her grounded. Still, something was missing. She missed the quiet moments, the time to reflect, to simply be. A sudden thought struck her: she hadn't taken a day off in months. Not a single day to herself, to reset, to recharge. It was something she had always promised herself she would do, but work had always gotten in the way. She had always been the one who pushed through, who kept going no matter how exhausted she was. But now, it was clear, she needed a break. The next day, Emily took the plunge. She emailed Lisa, explaining that she needed a day to recharge. Lisa, being understanding as always, immediately agreed and encouraged her to take the time for herself. That Saturday, Emily woke up with a feeling she hadn't had in a long time: freedom. She didn't have to rush out of bed to answer emails or prep for meetings. There was no pressing deadline waiting for her. For the first time in months, Emily was able to enjoy a peaceful morning without the heavy weight of responsibility pressing on her chest. She spent the day doing simple things, things that once brought her joy but had been forgotten in the chaos. She read a book on the couch, took a long walk in the park, and even treated herself to a quiet dinner at her favorite restaurant. It felt indulgent, but it was exactly what she needed. That evening, as she sipped her coffee and relaxed by the window, Emily reflected on how far she had come. Not just in her career, but in her personal growth. She had learned to lean on others, to ask for help when she needed it, and, most importantly, to take care of herself. She had been running on empty for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to fill her own cup. As she sat there, Emily received another message from Dwayne. "I hope you're taking it easy today. I know you've been working hard. Don't forget to enjoy the little things." The words felt like a gentle reminder to live in the present, to stop and appreciate the beauty of life outside the hustle. Emily smiled, grateful for his unwavering support. But as the evening wore on, Emily felt a new sense of clarity. She realized that there was still so much she had to learn, not just about her job, but about herself. She had been so focused on proving her worth to others, on making sure she was seen as capable and strong, that she had lost touch with her own needs. But now, with a little distance, she could see things more clearly. She wasn't just a manager, a colleague, or a leader; she was Emily, a person who deserved care, rest, and moments of peace. And she was ready to embrace that fully. The next morning, as Emily headed back to the office, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was ready to tackle the challenges ahead, but this time, she wasn't doing it alone. She had her team, her friends, and Dwayne by her side. And most importantly, she had herself. As the project continued, Emily found that her perspective had shifted. The pressure was still there, but she no longer felt like she was carrying it all on her own. She trusted her team more, communicated openly with Lisa, and took moments for herself when she needed them. It wasn't about doing it all perfectly, it was about doing it together, with support, understanding, and balance. And with that, the tide began to turn. As Emily settled into the rhythm of managing her team with newfound clarity, things at work began to flow more smoothly. She felt a sense of accomplishment, but there was an underlying restlessness that she couldn't shake. She was doing well, yes, managing her team, staying on top of her work, and even finding time for herself. But there was still a nagging feeling that something important was on the horizon. One crisp morning, Emily arrived at the office to find an unexpected email from Lisa, the subject line reading, "Urgent, new opportunity for the team." Her heart raced slightly as she clicked open the email, uncertain of what to expect. The message was brief, but to the point. "Emily, I wanted to give you a heads up about a new opportunity that's come across our desk. There's a new client, a big one, and they've specifically requested you to lead the project. It's a huge step, but I think you're ready. I'd like to discuss this further with you. Let's meet at 10 a.m. today. Cheers, Lisa." A mixture of excitement and anxiety flooded Emily. A new client? A big one? Her mind raced, her thoughts a blur of possibilities. This could be the chance she had been waiting for. But with this new opportunity came the inevitable challenge: could she handle it? Could she rise to the occasion and meet the demands of such a high-profile project? The morning passed quickly, and when 10 a.m. arrived, Emily headed to Lisa's office with a mix of anticipation and nervousness. Lisa was sitting behind her desk, looking as calm as ever, but Emily could sense the weight of the conversation ahead. "Come in, Emily. Sit down," Lisa said with a welcoming smile, though there was an edge of seriousness to her tone. Emily sat down, feeling the cool surface of the chair beneath her. "I got your email," she said, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her stomach. "What's this new opportunity?" Lisa leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped on the desk. "We've been approached by a major company, one that could be a game-changer for us. They're looking for a partner to help with a large-scale campaign, and they've heard great things about your work. They've specifically requested you to lead it." Emily's mind raced. A large-scale campaign? She had managed smaller projects, but this was different. This was big. Wow. That's a huge opportunity. "But, why me?" she asked, trying to wrap her mind around the sudden turn of events. Lisa smiled, her eyes filled with confidence. "Because I believe in you, Emily. You've proven yourself, time and time again. Your ability to take on challenges, communicate with the team, and navigate complex situations makes you the ideal candidate. Yes, it will be tough. Yes, it will push you to your limits. But I think you're ready. What do you think?" Emily sat back in her chair, taking in the weight of Lisa's words. She had worked hard to get to this point, but this was a whole new level of responsibility. It would require everything she had, every ounce of skill and leadership she had developed over the past few months. Could she handle it? "I'm honored, Lisa," Emily finally said, her voice steady, though there was a small flicker of doubt in her eyes. "But I have to admit, I'm a little scared. It's a lot to take on. And I don't want to let anyone down." Lisa's smile softened, her eyes kind. "Emily, fear is natural. It means you care, and that you're invested in the outcome. But you've come so far, and I know you're capable. This isn't just about doing a good job, it's about growing, challenging yourself, and pushing past your comfort zone. You've got this." The reassurance in Lisa's voice was enough to calm Emily's nerves, but just barely. She had never been one to back down from a challenge, but this felt different. There was a lot riding on this new project, not just her own success, but the future of the team, the company, and her own career. "I'll do it," Emily said, her voice firm now, the initial hesitation fading away. "I'll take on the project. But I'm going to need support. I want to make sure I'm not doing this alone." Lisa nodded, understanding the weight of the request. "Of course. We'll support you every step of the way. You don't have to do this alone, Emily. You never have to. And don't forget, you've got the team behind you." That was exactly what Emily needed to hear. The team had become her family over the past few months, and she knew that, with their help, she could take on anything. The next few days were a whirlwind of meetings and preparations. Emily dove into the new project head first, knowing it would stretch her limits. The campaign was far more complex than anything she had worked on before. It required long hours, meticulous planning, and collaboration with various departments across the company. But Emily was no stranger to hard work, and with her team by her side, she felt confident that they could pull it off. One night, after an exhausting meeting, Emily found herself sitting in her office, staring at the massive project plan laid out before her. It was daunting, but as she reviewed the strategies, the timelines, and the team's progress, something clicked. She wasn't just managing a project, she was building something bigger than herself. This was her chance to show not just what she was capable of, but what the whole team could achieve together. Just as she was about to dive into another set of emails, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Dwayne. "You're doing incredible, Emily. I can't wait to see what you accomplish with this. Keep pushing. You've got everything you need." His words were a beacon of light in the midst of the chaos. She smiled, feeling a renewed sense of determination. She had the support she needed, and she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. This new challenge wasn't just another task, it was her moment to prove to herself that she could handle anything that came her way. With her team, her resilience, and the support of those who believed in her, Emily was ready to rise to the occasion. As the days progressed, Emily's life seemed to be running at full speed. The new campaign was demanding every ounce of her energy and focus. Her calendar was filled to the brim with meetings, check-ins, and brainstorming sessions. Her phone buzzed constantly, with messages from the team, clients, and upper management. Every time she thought she had caught her breath, another task would appear, another deadline looming on the horizon. But despite the growing pressure, Emily held firm. She had faced challenges before, and she knew how to navigate through them. Her team was more united than ever, and their collaboration was seamless. There were moments when Emily felt the weight of the responsibility on her shoulders, moments when she questioned if she was doing enough, if she was leading them in the right direction. But then she would look at the progress they had made, at the ideas they had brainstormed together, and the results that were starting to take shape, and she knew that she was on the right path. Still, the stress was taking its toll. It wasn't just the work that was wearing her down, it was the constant battle between pushing forward and acknowledging her own limitations. She had learned how to delegate, how to lean on her team, but there were still moments when she felt the urge to take it all on herself. It was a tendency she had to fight. After all, she knew that leadership was about trust, not control. One particularly late evening, as she sat in her office reviewing the final draft of a presentation for the client, Emily's phone buzzed again. It was a message from Dwayne. "Hey, I know you're in the middle of all of this, but don't forget to take care of yourself. You're doing an amazing job, but you can't pour from an empty cup." Emily smiled at the message. Dwayne always knew how to ground her when she needed it most. She took a deep breath and set her phone down, trying to focus on the task at hand. But even his words, comforting as they were, couldn't dispel the feeling of being overwhelmed. She was in the middle of drafting an email to Lisa, asking for a brief break to clear her head, when the door to her office opened quietly. Emily looked up to find Rachel, one of her closest colleagues, standing in the doorway. "Hey, Emily," Rachel said softly, her voice full of concern. "Can we talk for a second?" "Of course," Emily said, gesturing to the chair in front of her desk. "What's up?" Rachel walked in and sat down, but her expression wasn't one of her usual cheerful demeanor. There was a hint of concern on her face, and Emily could tell that something was weighing on her mind. "I know you've been working non-stop lately," Rachel began. "And I know you're doing everything you can to make this project a success. But I just want to check in, how are you really doing?" Emily's heart sank slightly. She hadn't realized how much her exhaustion had begun to show. It wasn't like Rachel to ask such a direct question, especially when things seemed to be going so well on the surface. Emily opened her mouth to respond, but she found that the words wouldn't come. She had been so focused on keeping everything together that she hadn't taken a moment to honestly assess how she was feeling. "I'm fine," Emily said at last, though it didn't sound convincing even to her own ears. "Just a little tired, I guess. But that's normal, right? There's a lot going on, and I have to keep pushing." Rachel shook her head gently, her voice soft but firm. "Emily, pushing yourself like this isn't normal. You've been running on fumes for weeks. I know you want this project to succeed, and you've been doing amazing work. But you're only human. You can't keep going like this forever." Emily looked down at her hands, her mind swirling with conflicting thoughts. She knew Rachel was right, but admitting it felt like admitting weakness. She had always prided herself on being strong, on being able to handle everything that came her way. But now, in the quiet of her office, with Rachel's concerned gaze fixed on her, Emily couldn't deny the truth. "I don't know how to stop," Emily confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I feel like if I stop, everything will fall apart. This project is too important, and I can't let anyone down." Rachel reached across the desk and placed a hand on Emily's. "Emily, letting yourself rest isn't letting anyone down. You're an incredible leader. You've already done so much. But you need to take care of yourself if you want to keep going. You can't pour from an empty cup." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, though she quickly blinked them back. The truth was, she had been running on empty for too long. She had ignored the warning signs, telling herself that she could handle it, that she could push through. But Rachel's words cut through the facade she had built around herself. "You're right," Emily said softly, a weight lifting from her chest. "I need a break. I've been so focused on making everything perfect that I forgot to take care of myself." Rachel gave her a reassuring smile. "It's okay. We all need a little time to recharge. And you've earned it." With a deep breath, Emily made a decision. She would take a step back for a moment, even if just for a day. She would recharge, reset, and return to the project with renewed energy and focus. She had given so much of herself to the team, to the project, and to those around her. Now it was time to give something back to herself. As Rachel left her office, Emily stood up and walked over to the window. The city stretched out before her, a sprawling maze of lights and movement. For the first time in weeks, Emily allowed herself to just breathe. The pressure was still there, but it didn't feel as suffocating as it had before. She was not alone in this journey. She had a team that believed in her, friends who supported her, and a strength within herself that she was beginning to rediscover. Emily took out her phone and typed a quick message to Dwayne. "Thank you for reminding me to take care of myself. I think I'm finally ready to listen." She hit send, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. Tomorrow, she would take the break she needed. And when she returned, she would be stronger than ever, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The following day, Emily took a much-needed break. She had spent so long living in a constant whirlwind of work and deadlines that she had almost forgotten what it felt like to pause. No meetings, no emails to answer, no project plans to review. Just quiet time to herself. She spent the morning in the park, watching the trees sway gently in the wind, the sun breaking through the clouds in soft, golden rays. She hadn't realized how much she missed the simple moments, the ones where she could just be, without the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. For the first time in weeks, she felt the tension ease from her body. As she sat on a bench, sipping a cup of coffee, Emily thought about everything that had happened over the past few months. She had started this journey unsure of herself, barely holding it together as she balanced her career, her personal life, and the unexpected opportunity with the project. But here she was now, leading a high-stakes campaign and proving to herself, and to others, that she was capable of more than she ever imagined. But there were still moments when the pressure felt unbearable. She could hear Rachel's voice echoing in her mind, "You need to take care of yourself." It was a simple but powerful reminder, one that Emily would hold on to moving forward. She had learned that taking care of her well-being wasn't a sign of weakness, but a necessity for success. If she didn't prioritize her own health and happiness, she wouldn't be able to give her best to the people who depended on her. As the afternoon rolled around, Emily decided to check in with the team. She sent a quick message in their group chat, letting them know that she was taking the day off to rest and recharge, but that she was still available if anything urgent came up. The replies flooded in almost immediately, everyone understood, and several of her teammates expressed how much they appreciated the time she was giving herself. Emily felt a deep sense of gratitude for them. They were not just colleagues, they were a support system, a team that had become like a second family. Later that evening, Emily found herself sitting in her favorite little cafe, sipping a warm cup of tea. She took out her notebook, jotting down thoughts and reflections as she relaxed in the quiet atmosphere. The soft hum of conversation around her was soothing, and it was in this moment that she realized just how much she had grown. She thought about her initial fears, how she had almost turned down the opportunity to lead the project because she didn't think she was ready. She thought about the challenges she had faced, the long nights, the overwhelming pressure, the moments of doubt. But she had pushed through. She had faced her fears head-on and emerged stronger, more capable, and more confident than she had ever been. It was then that Emily realized something even more profound. The pressure, the challenges, the moments of doubt, they were all a part of the process. Growth didn't happen in a straight line. It happened in fits and starts, in moments of struggle and triumph, in times of uncertainty and clarity. And Emily had learned to embrace that uncertainty, to trust that each step, no matter how difficult, was leading her somewhere important. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from Dwayne. "How are you holding up, Emily? You've been working so hard lately, I hope you're getting some time to relax. Remember, it's okay to slow down every now and then." A smile tugged at Emily's lips as she read his message. Dwayne had been a constant source of support, even from afar. She had been so caught up in the project that she hadn't stopped to truly appreciate the people who had been rooting for her all along. She quickly typed back a response. "I'm doing better, Dwayne. Taking a little time to reflect and recharge. I needed it. Thank you for always being there." She hit send and sat back in her chair, letting the warmth of the tea fill her up. It was easy to get caught up in the rush of work, to let the demands of others overshadow her own needs. But now, she understood the importance of balance. She couldn't pour from an empty cup. And if she wanted to keep growing, she needed to prioritize her own well-being. As the evening turned to night, Emily made a promise to herself. She would continue to push herself, to strive for success, but she would never again sacrifice her own health and happiness in the process. She would set boundaries, take breaks when needed, and always remember to take care of herself first. Tomorrow, she would return to the office refreshed, ready to take on the challenges that awaited her. But tonight, she would savor the peace she had found in the quiet moments of reflection. The next day, as Emily returned to work, she felt more centered than ever. The pressure was still there, but it no longer felt overwhelming. She knew what she had to do, and she was confident that, with her team's support and her own determination, she could tackle any challenge that came her way. As she walked into the office, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The project was still a massive undertaking, but it no longer felt like a burden. It felt like an opportunity to prove to herself, and to everyone else, just how much she was capable of. The days following Emily's moment of reflection passed quickly, and with them came a new sense of purpose. The project continued to demand more of her time and energy, but now, she approached it with a calmness that had been missing before. She delegated more effectively, trusted her team more deeply, and allowed herself to rest when needed. The balance she had fought so hard to find was finally within her grasp. But despite the newfound clarity, Emily was about to face a challenge that would test everything she had worked for. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the first signs of trouble appeared. Emily was in the middle of a meeting with her team when she received an urgent call from her assistant. There was an issue with one of the campaign's key partners, something about an unexpected delay in production. Her heart sank as she listened to the details. The delay would push back the entire timeline, possibly affecting the campaign's final delivery. This wasn't just a minor hiccup, this was a major setback that could put everything they had worked for at risk. Her mind raced. The pressure she had worked so hard to manage now felt like it was about to crush her. She quickly excused herself from the meeting and stepped into the hallway, her mind spinning with solutions and contingencies. She was used to problem solving, but this time, the stakes were higher than they had ever been. If she couldn't fix this, it wouldn't just affect the project, it would affect the careers of everyone on her team, as well as her own future. Dwayne's words echoed in her mind, "You can't do this alone." She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She had made progress in trusting her team, in letting go of the need to control everything. Now, more than ever, she needed to lean on them. She walked back into the meeting room, ready to tackle the problem head-on. "All right, team," Emily said, her voice steady despite the storm raging in her mind. "We have a situation. Our production partner has hit an unexpected delay, and it's going to push back our timeline by at least 2 weeks. We need to figure out how to address this and keep everything on track." The team immediately got to work, brainstorming solutions. Emily's calm demeanor, despite the mounting pressure, inspired confidence. They worked late into the night, exploring all possible solutions, from negotiating with the production partner to finding alternative ways to speed up the process. By the end of the night, they had a plan, a difficult one, but a plan nonetheless. It wasn't ideal, but it was their best shot at keeping the project alive. As Emily sat back in her chair, exhausted but satisfied with the work they had done, she couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. They had faced the challenge together, and together, they had found a way forward. But as the days went on, Emily began to feel the weight of the decision. The plan they had come up with wasn't just difficult, it was risky. It would require everyone to push harder, work longer, and sacrifice more. The pressure to make it work was immense. And though Emily was grateful for the support of her team, she couldn't help but feel like she was once again standing at the edge of a precipice, unsure of what would happen if she took one wrong step. One evening, as Emily was working late in her office, the phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Dwayne. "I know you're going through a tough time, but don't forget to check in with yourself. You've done amazing things so far. Don't let this one challenge make you forget how far you've come." His words were a reminder of everything she had worked for, of how much progress she had made in learning to take care of herself while still pushing forward in her career. But the stress, the fear, and the uncertainty were starting to take their toll. Emily stared at the screen for a moment, feeling the familiar sense of exhaustion creep over her. She wanted to respond, to thank him for his unwavering support, but the words felt inadequate. Instead, she put her phone down and buried herself back into the work. The next day, Emily arrived at the office early. She knew the team was counting on her, and she couldn't afford to let them down. But as the day wore on, she began to feel a growing sense of unease. The task ahead of them seemed insurmountable. Every time she checked in with a different team member, there was another challenge to address, another problem to solve. The weight of it all was pressing down on her. By the time the clock struck 5 p.m., Emily was running on fumes. Her eyes were tired, her mind foggy, but she couldn't leave, not yet. Not until the plan was solid, not until every detail was in place. She just needed a little more time. At that moment, her assistant, Sarah, knocked on the door and walked in. "Emily," she said gently, "you've been here all day. Maybe you should take a break. Just a few minutes, for your own sanity. You can come back and finish up after." Emily smiled weakly. She appreciated Sarah's concern, but there was no time for a break. Not now. But before she could respond, there was a knock at the door again. This time, it was Rachel, who stepped in and crossed her arms. "Emily, you've been working yourself to the bone," Rachel said, her tone firm but caring. "You need to stop. Now. You can't keep running on empty like this." Emily opened her mouth to argue, but Rachel held up a hand. "I get it. You're under pressure. But this isn't sustainable. If you don't take a step back, you're going to burn out. And then everything you've worked for will be for nothing." The words hit Emily like a punch to the gut. She had been so focused on the project that she had ignored her own well-being, again. And now, in front of two of the people who cared about her most, she realized that they were right. She had to stop. She had to take care of herself, before it was too late. With a heavy sigh, Emily leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. "You're right," she said quietly. "I can't do it all on my own. I need help. And I need a break." The following morning, Emily made a promise to herself. She would no longer allow the pressure to dictate her life. The previous night's conversation with Rachel and Sarah had hit harder than she had expected. They were right, Emily had been pushing herself too hard, ignoring her own well-being in pursuit of success. She knew she couldn't keep up that pace forever. But change, real change, was hard. The weight of her responsibilities still loomed over her, and there were moments when Emily questioned whether she was truly capable of letting go. Yet, in the quiet of the morning, with the sun streaming through the window, she felt something stir inside her, a sense of hope, a quiet whisper that maybe it was time to prioritize her health, her happiness, and her personal life. Maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to sacrifice everything for her career. That morning, she made a decision. She'd take the rest of the week off, completely off. No emails, no meetings, no late-night work. She would disconnect and give herself the space to recharge. She would come back refreshed, ready to lead the team with a clear mind and a renewed sense of purpose. And for the first time in months, Emily felt a true sense of relief. It was as if the weight she had been carrying was finally being lifted, one small step at a time. For the next few days, Emily focused on herself. She spent time with her family, took long walks in the park, and caught up on her favorite books and TV shows. She gave herself permission to just be, without guilt, without pressure. It was hard at first, especially when her mind kept drifting back to the campaign. But as the days passed, the urgency faded, replaced by a growing sense of clarity. One afternoon, Emily found herself sitting by the window in her favorite cafe, sipping a cup of coffee and watching people go about their day. She had been reading a book on leadership, something light and inspirational, and had come across a passage that stuck with her: true leaders don't have to carry the weight of the world alone. They lift others up and trust them to carry the load together. The words resonated deeply. She had spent so long trying to handle everything herself, afraid that if she didn't do it all, everything would fall apart. But now, she understood, leadership wasn't about doing everything. It was about empowering others, building a team that could work together toward a shared goal. It was about trusting that they, too, had the strength to carry the weight. Emily smiled to herself, feeling a deep sense of peace. She had been so focused on proving her worth that she had forgotten the importance of collaboration and support. She didn't have to do it all on her own. She had a team, a family, and friends who believed in her. And most importantly, she believed in herself. That night, as Emily sat at her kitchen table, sipping tea and reflecting on everything she had learned, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Dwayne. "I hope you're getting some rest, Emily. I'm really proud of everything you've accomplished. Take care of yourself. You've earned it." Her heart warmed as she read his words. She had come a long way from the uncertain, overwhelmed person she had been just a few months ago. She had faced challenges, taken risks, and grown in ways she never thought possible. But the journey wasn't over, it was just beginning. The following week, Emily returned to work. She walked into the office with a renewed sense of energy, ready to tackle the challenges ahead. But this time, she wasn't carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. She was walking beside her team, supporting them as they supported her. Together, they would succeed. As she gathered with her team to discuss the next phase of the project, Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They had come so far. She had come so far. And while there would still be challenges ahead, she knew now that she didn't have to face them alone. The campaign was a success. It was difficult, yes, and there were moments when it seemed like everything would fall apart. But in the end, Emily and her team pulled through, achieving more than they had thought possible. And Emily, through it all, had learned the most important lesson of all: success wasn't about doing everything yourself. It was about trusting those around you, lifting each other up, and knowing that you didn't have to carry the load alone. As she reflected on her journey, Emily realized that the greatest achievements weren't the milestones or the accolades, it was the growth, the relationships, and the strength she had found within herself. She had started this journey unsure of herself, afraid that she wasn't enough. But she had ended it knowing that she was more than enough. She was a leader, a collaborator, a friend, and most importantly, she was someone who had learned to trust herself and the people around her. And that, she realized, was just the beginning. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?